Got me so fed up, I might just go and ghost you and burn out to the wet, we cheap and gas, we smoking reefer. Knocking on my door, that Grim Reaper wanna take my soul. I'm a living God, I by the devil just to make them fall. I ain't want no hater, I just left the police running. I was born a paper chaser for the money, make them pass. I was running in a whip, Richard Wolves in the backseat. Shorty took a blade, standing out like a black sheep.
So I'm out, it's a Saturday, I'm in New Mexico. I am working on my New Mexico project, but I'm trying to stay focused on the non-people related photography. I don't have the time to establish those relationships right now, and I don't have time to spend with people to build trust and do that kind of work. So I'm working on the non-photography or non-people related work. I've got 33 boxes I have to check. I've checked about 10 so far, and I'm hoping today to check another. They've had snow here, which is interesting. We're quite a bit further south than Santa Fe, but they probably had 3 or 4 inches here, and we got nothing. So it's a bit peculiar. It's about 40 degrees, but the wind is whipping, and it feels much colder. But God, what a beautiful place, and what a beautiful day. So I just left the park where I was shooting today. I did not get the image that I wanted, but I got kind of a B-level image of what I wanted. And just to give you an example, I talk to people about this all the time, but birders are the most educated, driven, focused subculture I've ever met in my life. They also, for the most part, are some of the most helpful people ever. So as I'm leaving, I'm talking to the young park ranger, and basically I say something about birds, and he's like, that's all I do. That's all I do in my free time. And so I told him about my project, and I said, look, there's going to be 33 images of 33 different birds in this book. And he was like, oh, we started talking about the idea of the book. He knew every county in New Mexico by heart, where it is, and which bird would be the signature bird from each of these counties. And that's what I love about birding is, first of all, I didn't get the A-list picture that I wanted, which means it's going to drive me crazy and haunt me for forever until I get back and actually try to get that picture again. And he said the same thing. It's like when you miss something or you don't quite get what you want, it just drives you crazy and you want to come back for more. So it was a really successful overall day. I probably waited for 3 hours for the picture I wanted. I didn't get it. I tried to make some other things. I did, like I said, make a couple of pictures that will work, but there's always something better out there. So now I'm heading back a little bit north and then due east, and I'm going to shoot until the sun dies and then head back towards Santa Fe. Testes, 1, 2, 3. Hi, this would look better if I used my Fuji X-H2S and my Viltrox 13 with a neutral density filter, but I'm in a hurry. And as you heard it here first, everything is better when you're in a hurry, especially when it comes to quality. Quality is job 2 when you're in a hurry. And I mean number 2. Yes, that number 2. So, after all, goddammit, this is a film that's supposed to be about soul, so we need to talk about soul. But before we go any further, soul, that term is a slippery slope, because when I say soul, I don't mean megachurch televangelist who's flying private because God told him to buy a Gulfstream. No, that's not soul. When I mention the word soul, there tends to be a religious connotation applied to the term, which does not fit in this case. I'm not talking about religion. I am not a religious person, and I don't mean that kind of soul. So televangelist, no. Flying private Gulfstream, no. I'm talking about meaning. Yes, the M word. This whole post, this whole film, came about as I was driving to work on my New Mexico project. And that was a chair, not me, by the way. I was driving to work on my New Mexico project, and I was listening to John Coltrane. Now, you might hate John Coltrane. You probably didn't know him personally, but I don't know, maybe you hate him. Or more appropriately, you might hate his music. So if you don't like jazz, then take another genre of music. It could be blues, it could be R&B, it could be reggae, it could be, I was gonna say it could be country, but I'm not gonna go that far. I don't like country, which means you shouldn't either, because you should do everything I do. So I'm listening to Coltrane, and there is a undeniable feeling behind that music. It's like listening to Miles. When Miles starts playing that trumpet, you kind of stop what you're doing and you're like, I remember where I was the first time I heard Miles Davis. I was on Boulevard Fin des Calvaires in Paris at Monique Stotter's apartment. And she was playing Kinda Blue by Miles Davis. And I just remember sitting there, looking out the window, listening to the traffic and watching the Parisian daily life go by and thinking to myself, oh, my life just changed. So again, if you don't like jazz, then pick another genre. There are certain practitioners in music that produce a sound that has a sense of meaning behind it that is undeniable. The same thing could be said for certain painters that paint in a way where you just look at something and you're frozen and you're like, holy good God, balls of gravy. Like, I can't move. I'm frozen here. The same could be said for literature. If I read a Somerset Maugham book, for example, his books are books that I reread every year because there's just something to them. As a creative person, that's kind of what we're after. And thinking about these things, and before I go further, I should mention on the flip side of the soul thing, you have things like modern pop music, which is just an absolute travesty to the olfactory. It's horrible. Pop music is commercial music, which is what made me think of you all. Commercial. And here's the cool part about this whole thing. This is a happy story, by the way. This is not a nightmare. This is not a sad tale where you're going to be dry heaving at the end of it. Remember, don't puke. There's a flip side, soul, commercial. So pop music is about commercial, right? It's about coming up with pop hits that make a ton of money for the record label. But that music has no soul whatsoever. It's the fast food of sound. It's just a waste. And like when I hear, like, my nieces love pop music, and I'm like, oh, good God. Every time I listen to it, I'm like, I would rather put my head in a vice and eat a light bulb than listen to this music. As creatives, we're after the meaning. The vast majority of you, and again, this is where this whole thing came back from my head to you, is the vast majority of you who watch this channel are not professional photographers. You're what I would call either consumer or prosumer level. Most of you have no intention of becoming professional photographers, which I've said a million times is a great place to be, because I don't see professional photography right now as a very welcoming space for people trying to make a living. It's a difficult place for established people to make a living, let alone people coming in. So I think that's a good thing. When you are hired to do commercial photography, and let's just say editorial, commercial, advertising, automotive, still life, fashion, product, that kind of thing, the idea of soul, of creating something that has soul, is rarely ever spoken about. Because again, it's commercial. You're selling a product or a service or an idea to the masses. There's not a lot of soul involved in that. Look at the commercials during the football season. They are the most god-awful, atrocious, horrendously produced, horrendously done. They're junk, and that's designed to sell. Try to follow me here. It's designed to sell a product or a service or an idea to the masses, to that 80% who's kind of brain dead as it is, and they probably look at those commercials and laugh. The guy who has the Taco Bell place in his house. I don't know if you saw that commercial. And the only reason I'm able to do this is my bud let me come over and watch some football. I'm not really exposed to regular TV commercials, so I didn't know how bad they were.
And then I'm stunned. It's like a stain on my soul. Oh, there's that word again. Stain on my soul that I've actually had to witness some of these commercials. But there's like an NFL player who has a Taco Bell in his house. This is, of course, fabricated for the ad. He doesn't really have a Taco Bell in his house. But I looked at that commercial and I thought, someone had to pay for that. Someone had to approve it. It went through multiple rounds of meetings. It went through God knows how many millions of dollars to produce that, let alone what they had to pay him to do that. And it's just absolutely horrendous. But that 80% of people out there, they're like, oh, this is really funny. I'm going to laugh at that. Okay, yeah, that's why I'm volunteering for Mars. Whoever can build the spaceship, one-way ticket, I'm going first, and I have no intention of coming back. So the beauty for you guys, you all, you people, is that you don't have to deal in the commercial side. So you don't have to produce work that doesn't have any meaning because you're trying to satisfy a commercial client. That's a great place to be. It's far more fun, trust me, it's far more fun than being in a position where you have to satisfy a client by producing soulless work. So you have one task, and one task only, and that is to find the soul in your work. And I'm not going to use the word soul anymore. I'm going to use the word meaning. You got to find some meaning in your work. And here's the thing. I think there's one way to do it, and on the surface, it's really simple. But underneath, it's really goddamn difficult. It took me 10 years, literally 10 years after photography school, 10 years of working full-time as a photographer before I was like, oh, gee, I think I figured something out. Don't be me. Don't take 10 years. The easiest way to do this, and again, it ain't easy, people. It ain't easy being green. You have to turn everything off and tune everyone else out. And that sounds easy, right? You're like, oh, I'll just quit paying attention. But if you're an Instagrammer, if you're a YouTuber, if you're an online person, if you're a forum person, if you're constantly scouring the internet for inspiration, you will never, ever figure it out. I'll just tell you that straight right now. What you will figure out if you're doing that is someone else's interpretation of meaning. It is not your interpretation of meaning. And here's the thing. Here's the tricky part. I said it was easy. You just turn everything off and tune everyone out for as long as it takes for you to find something that has implicit meaning to you as a human being. Who are you? What do you believe? What do those beliefs make you do? And what do they make you think? And what do they make you feel? That's hard. And here's the part where it gets a little dirty, gets a little nasty. It gets a little open woundy, like maybe even infected open wound, if we want to talk, we get into the nitty gritty, is when you tune everything and everyone else out, you might find out you're a total asshole. That's a possibility. You might be an asshole. But here's the thing. I've seen a lot of assholes produce unbelievably good creative work. In fact, some of the best creatives are completely abrasive human beings. Now, I'm not suggesting, if you do a deep dive on you and you turn out to be a raging asshole, I'm not saying that's something you embrace. I'm saying that's something that you understand, you factor in, you take it into account, and you modify. No one wants to be around a raging asshole anymore. The days of photographers being able to be raging assholes is over because most of the people coming into professional photography who are in charge of making the decisions and holding the budgets, these are people in their 20s. They're not going to put up with a 65-year-old asshole. They're going to turn around and hire their friend for 10% of the price, for 10% of the work, because they know the person and they know their friend is probably not going to be a raging asshole to them. So that's it. So you, on the outside of the commercial space, tune everyone and everything else out, figure it out what means something to you, and that should be your trail of crumbs towards the projects that are going to have meaning for you. And again, if you look in the mirror and you find somebody staring back at you that's kind of a questionable, nefarious a-hole, factor it in and say, okay, I don't want to be an a-hole, but what makes me me? And if that's a bizarre set of ingredients, it's totally fine. What you don't want to end up doing, and this is a guarantee that you will never find anything of meaning, is following what other people are doing, which is 99.9% of what you see in the online space. The online space, I've talked about this 10 million times, but it needs to be said again. Success in the online space is about following. It's about numbers and algorithms and basically feeding a machine that will create the largest possible audience for you. That is almost impossible to do if you are doing work that has meaning to you as an individual, because most likely the work that has meaning to you as an individual probably doesn't have a mass appeal. Mass appeal is fast food photography online. It's the gear reviews, it's the talking about equipment, it's the slow motion footage of the camera hanging on the shoulder, it's the 3-day films, it's all that stuff that's formulaic, that's built for following, but none of it has any meaning, because 2 seconds after looking at it, you're like, what's the point of this? So I'll give you another little brief example, and then I'll shut up and go back to my work because I have a meeting in 20 minutes. I also have a surprise visit from a gallery owner who's driving through Santa Fe today and wrote me and said, hey, do you want to get together? And I was supposed to do a talk for him in early February. I was one of 5 people that was going to give a talk, and I figured out it's the same day I'm flying out, so I can't do it, and we're going to do a pre-recorded little 10-minute thing of me talking like I'm doing now that he's going to play for this audience. So I have 2 upcoming talks coming up. One for another photographer out of New York, and then this gallery owner from LA, who's a guy I love. And you know the reason I love him? Because he's completely unique in my experience in the gallery world. Every time I run into him, he's doing something completely unlike anything that any other gallery owner I know is doing. And that could mean flying to Russia to do something, or it could mean creating a community that's completely different from anybody else online. That's why I love the guy. That's why when he says I'm driving through Santa Fe and I'm like, oh crap, I got meetings, I will cancel the meetings to go meet him, because when I come out of that meeting, I know that I'm going to be thinking a little bit differently than I was when I went in. And I think maybe he likes to meet with me or talk to me because I'm a bit the same way. Those are the people I want to hang out with. They're in the 20%, they're not in the 80%. He doesn't eat fast food. He doesn't do what everybody else is doing. Always be in the 20. Don't be in the 80. The last thing I'll say is when it comes to this like homogenized online world, a long time famous photographer I ran into, I was talking to him, I've known him since my LA days, and he said to me, hey, you're on YouTube, right? And I was like, oh, that was a dagger. It was cringeworthy. I said, well, kinda. That's where I put 1 foot over the fence, and I'm like, no, I don't want to be, but I am. And he's like, hey, well, someone sent me this link to a photographer has a YouTube channel. And my first thought was Alex Soth. And I was like, oh, he's going to dig it, because Soth is a real deal, and Soth will provide relevant information, and Soth makes good photography. So, but it wasn't Alex Soth. It was someone else, a super popular YouTuber. And this photographer looks at me and he goes, what was I supposed to learn from him? And I said, nothing. I go, you're an actual photographer and you've worked for 30 years. I was like, you're not going to learn anything from this guy. That's not the point. And he was like, I don't get it. And he said to me, I don't think this person's ever done an assignment. And I said, I don't think they have ever done an assignment, but in the world that he's in, it doesn't matter. And he said, well, who's learning from that person? And I said, people who don't have any education or background in photography. I said, to those people, this guy's probably the Messiah. But to someone with training, that's probably not the person that you're going to want to like spend your YouTube time with. So that's kind of what I'm getting at here. This older guy that was talking to me, his work has meaning. He's been doing it for a long time. So he's got some advantages that some of the newbies out there don't have, and they'll probably never have because those things don't exist anymore. But there's a meaning, there's intention, there's purpose behind the work. That is what I'm after, and this is the best part. Like I said, this is a happy ending. If you're not having to dick around with commercial photography, then all you have to do is find something that has meaning. And here's the thing, I cannot tell you what that is. People ask me all the time, what am I supposed to shoot, man? What am I supposed to like? What am I supposed to care about? First of all, those questions are astounding to me. Just absolutely astounding that someone would ask someone else those questions, but I get it, because if there's no foundation to your photography, and that foundation isn't built on photography, it's built on life, it's built on knowledge, it's built on experimentation, risk, all those things. So you have to go back and put the homework in yourself. You cannot find purpose or meaning from somebody else. It has to come from within. So again, could take you a day, could take you weeks, months, years, took me 10. I'm a bit slow, public school, C student, a little bit, 10 years. I felt kind of good about myself when I finally figured it out. So that was it. That's the purpose of this film, is to say, look, just take some time, find something with meaning. It's going to make your work better. It's also going to make it a lot easier to talk about what it is you're doing. Because when people ask you, they will immediately feel the connection that you have to the work. If you ask me to describe the work I did for a famous German fixture company while I lived in Los Angeles, I would be at a loss for words. I felt bad shooting that stuff. I didn't feel bad cashing the checks. I felt bad shooting it. I was a bit embarrassed. And if you asked me to describe it now, I would really not have a whole lot to say to you. But if you ask me about some of the projects that I was assigned to do on the border, I could give you intimate details of every single day of what those projects were and how they transpired and what worked and what didn't, and individual photographs. I remember it like it happened yesterday. That's what happens when you do work with meaning. If you're not working as a photographer, there is no reason to do photography that doesn't have any meaning to you. Find something. I'm doing the bird thing now, kind of. I was going to give you a little sneak peek of what's coming, but I'm not. I'm going to make a separate film because half of you are going to just sign off and just say you're never going to listen to me ever again. And then the other half are going to say, finally. And it's cool. And I have a partner in crime, which I'll share with you. I'm collaborating with someone on something that I think is going to be really interesting. I'm actually incredibly excited to get started on it. And oh, that was something that just came up. That was like a protein shake. That was the bad side of it. Maybe it was hot and left in the sun, and maybe the base ingredient was mayonnaise. I don't know. Think about it. Meaning, I'll get back to you.